Hi everyone, Dr. Brad Gordon. I'm the Southern Minnesota Program Manager for Great River Greening, and I'm at Gray Cloud Dunes Scientific Natural Area. Prairie on a sandy dune, but around the perimeter there are some oak savannas. So an oak savanna is a pretty unique habitat, and we used to have many more oak savannas throughout Minnesota and the Midwest. I believe we're down to less than 1% of the historic oak savanna habitat, that ecosystem. And a lot of people, the easiest way that they describe it is that it's something between a prairie and a forest, but it's probably a little bit more like a combination of the two. So it has the prairie species on the ground, and then it has trees still providing canopy. So those trees though are pretty unique species. There are certain species that work well in oak savannas because they're trees that can tolerate fire. So oak savannas, like prairies, depend on a lot of disturbance. So you'll have fires that move through, burn out a lot of small trees, shrubs, and plants that can't really tolerate fire, and then they'll leave behind the ones that can. So for here in Minnesota, most of our savannas are oak savannas because we have things like Bur Oak and some red oak savannas, and then other places in the Midwest we also have black oak in our savannas. So the Bur Oak especially, its scientific name is actually Quercus macrocarpa. I believe I'm getting that right because it's thick skin, macrocarpa. That means like big skin, thick skin, because it handles fire really well. So Bur Oak is a great species in oak savannas. I believe that is what is right behind me. So then you have that canopy that provides a little bit of shading, and then you actually have slightly different species that come up than what you have in a prairie, but still very similar. So you can get things like hazelnuts, cherries, raspberries, all those things growing underneath those oaks that may not survive quite as well in the open prairie. So oak savannas are going to be providing very similar ecological benefits to prairies. So they have pollinator species, a lot of coneflowers, black-eyed Susans, and then so you're going to have a lot of habitat for those rare pollinators, as well as our bumblebees, our native bees, our other butterfly species. Some of the things that we're working on with Great River Greening is that we're working with farmers. It's imitating the historic oak savanna communities by getting cattle on the system, because historically we would have had bison and elk in those areas. So they would have been able to hide kind of in the trees and get some shade, but still have a lot of vegetation that's growing underneath. So if you go from an oak savanna then into a woodland or a forest, the denser the canopy, the less that you're going to have growing on the ground. So less sunlight means less productivity. Less sunlight means less plant growth underneath. So that oak savanna is kind of like that ideal middle ground, the combination of prairies and forests where you still have that shade, but there's still enough sunlight to be able to grow a lot of prairie species underneath. So it's one of my favorite systems. I've been working in it for a while, and so it's really great to be able to visit them every once in a while. They provide a little bit more wind, breeze, cool you down, more shade, but they're still kind of open, so you can walk through them easier than a forested area that's going to have a lot of dense shrubs and then hardly anything on the ground. So some great oak savanna locations around the Twin Cities are very similar to the spots where we have prairies. So Lebanon Hills has a few oak savannas that they're restoring. They're pretty small at Lebanon Hills, but you can still see some there. And then a lot of those Three Rivers Parks districts also have some oak savannas, like Carver and Highland and Murphy, Hanrahan, I think I'm saying that right. So you have some great oak savannas in those areas. There's some kind of peripheral oak savannas in the Battle Creek Park in St. Paul, the eastern side of St. Paul cities there. So there are some great spots, and a lot of our oak savannas in the Twin Cities areas, again, they're on the edges of prairies, and so you're going to see them kind of on that perimeter instead of having like a full-on oak savanna to visit. But I think Carver Park Reserve, it's a Three Rivers Parks District over near Lake Minnetonka, is kind of one of the better oak savanna systems that I'm aware of here in the Twin Cities. And it's got some great trails kind of right in the entrance to the park. So there's some horseback riding trails going through it and everything. So yeah, hopefully you can go visit an oak savanna near you.